Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, September 8th, 2023, and this is episode 790 of Living Free in Tennessee. And it's a Friday show, so it's Homestead Happenings. And I'm streaming a little bit early. You'll find out why later in this episode. We need to wrap up early. But if you're seeing this and want to get the word out, let folks know that we are live. I will take your questions. Just put them in all caps, like the first word, and then we'll go from there. Today, we're going to talk about managing a homestead when somebody's gone, new infrastructure for the animals that Tactical's been experimenting with, a coming birth, and more. That's all going to be in today's show. We'll be on the shorter side today. I'm trying to keep us under an hour. So it should be a good show. If you have questions about anything homesteading or anything else, just put them, folks, in the live stream in all caps. If you are listening to the audio podcast of this and wondering how to get your question in, just send it to Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. That's Nicole, Nicole, at livingfreeintennessee.com. Okay, so first we're going to start with our featured event of today's show, and it's a meetup that happens tomorrow at the Holler Homestead. Does not cost money. It's a potluck, and it's over here on the website, livingfreeintennessee.com, on the right-hand side if you go there with your web browser. If you go to the site with your phone, you'll have to scroll through the first couple posts, and then it lists the events, but you just go there and then click on, I have to click on it over on the screen. So click on the potluck and meet up in the Holler, 4:30 p.m. on Saturday. We have Tatiana Sakurai coming to talk about herbs, using herbs for healing. We'll start out with a potluck and sort of meet and greet, and then we will end up having her give us a presentation. We usually wrap up by 6:30, and then we're on our merry way. We had a great time last time. We had about 20 people here, so come on out. It's in Lancaster, Tennessee. Address is on that event. Okay. Next up, I want to thank our sponsors of today's show. And the first sponsor is Strong Roots Resources. Strong Roots Resources is run by Kerry Brown. And what he does is come to your property, sits down with you to go over your goals, and then goes through your property and helps you come up with sort of a master plan for how you're going to roll out your homestead or an edible landscape or whatever. But he also does something really cool where he looks for all of the wild edible plants on your property. He can GPS locate them and then give you that information so you know where all the good stuff is. If you want to find out more about that, go to strongrootsresources.com. Our second sponsor of today's show is Agorist Tax Advice. That's run by Matthew Sursley. I love what he has put together. He has basically put up a system where he helps you look at all of your finances, especially if you're running a business or, running as a sole proprietorship, but kind of looking like, am I structured right? Am I tracking my finances right? He helps you understand the tax code surrounding what you're doing, determine the best way to organize and structure your business dealings and your financial life, properly track tax write-offs so you keep more of the money you should be keeping, because that's how the tax code is written. If you want to have a free consultation with Matthew Sursley at Agorist Tax Advice, go to agoristaxadvice.com/LFTN and schedule your consultation. And good morning to Philippine Nomad and Anarchy. Good to see you in the live stream today, guys. You know how to get questions in if you want, or, suggest a topic. We're going to talk about featured forage today. And we're kind of at a time of year where the late summer stuff in Tennessee is still good. So you can still find goldenrod. You can get the mullein seeds. You can harvest mint and dry it for teas, all of that stuff. Hello, Claiming Liberty. But something special has happened this week. The pawpaws are ripe. So you shake the pawpaw trees because they're taller than me in the woods, and they fall. And they last for about a week in the fridge, sometimes two if you're lucky. They get bruised when they fall. So if you're cultivating them and you trim them lower so you can get the fruit, that's better. What you don't want to do is harvest pawpaw prematurely because it will taste terrible if you do that. It needs to ripen on the tree. So this is just a very narrow period of time. I get excited when it happens. And other than that, it is the normal herbal stuff that we can get off the land. We also have watercress coming on. It's looking really good right now. And usually it'll look good through about November unless it gets knocked back by a frost or we have fourth summer, which happens sometimes where it's like, it's fall, it's not fall, it's fall, it's not fall. And watercress, when it gets really hot, doesn't really love life either. It'll bolt and bloom. And I like eating the flowers of watercress because they're peppery. But people who don't like radish flavor are not going to like that at all. In fact, if you don't like radishes at all, watercress basically tastes like mild radishes. It's just as it gets older, it tastes like stronger radishes. So it just sort of depends where you get it in the life cycle. So you may not love it. Somebody asked me the other day how to deal with mold exposure and kind of getting that out of their system. I have no data to back this up, but I know when I was exposed to mold in Florida on Amelia Island at the hotel I stayed in, it was bad. And I had visited the hotel before the event. I had noticed that they had toxic mold because I could tell by the way it made me feel in their event space. And I went basically to Goodwill and bought a bunch of business suits at Goodwill, did the event in those suits and left them there when I left. Came home, didn't bring any luggage home at all, like left all of it. Took my clothes off outside my house, took a shower, and the whole way home I was just craving watercress. And so I ended up eating, like, for the next 3 or 4 meals, lots of watercress salads. And I don't know what that is all about, but I do know that taking that approach to the mold exposure, I did not end up with any long-term things that I know of. And it may seem like frantic and weird to do that, but anybody who has sort of a sensitivity to molds understands what that feeling is when it's like it starts in the nose and just it's not good. I guess it's like being exposed to any like airborne allergy, but it's horrible. So that's something I've used watercress for. And the cool thing about wild watercress is that it's sort of growing on the land and getting the nutrients it needs. And I think that's a really great way to expose yourself to nutrient dense foods is to forage, because you get those things that are right on the line. Of course, I think last week I talked about I found some oyster mushrooms, and we have eaten all of those now. Like, we ate a lot of oyster mushrooms. I need to start tromping through the woods to find more, but there's a lot to do to get ready for the Self-Reliance Festival. So we'll see. I just need to build the time in, Okay. Next up, we have a livestock update. This is where we talk about what's up with the critters on the farm. We don't have a lot of change with the critters. Like, we're kind of in the waiting game. The chickens should lay eggs sometime in the next 4 weeks. The ducks should lay eggs sometime. Well, they should be coming out of the molt, the ones that are older. So that should start up again by November. And then all of the new ones probably won't start laying until November, December. And then it sort of staggers throughout the winter as we go through that. We have 4 ages of ducks this year because I was incubating them. And that's interesting. So we have the last little baby ducklings are still separate from everybody, but sometime in the next 2 weeks, they'll be integrated with the flock. And once that happens, good morning, A-Rape here, it will make my life a lot easier. By my life, I mean Tactical's life, because he's doing most of the animal management right now. Because then it's just one, it's in essence, good morning, Jenny. In essence, it's, all one flock staying in one place, but they'll get up and go their separate ways in the morning. From there, we're going to have to do a cleanup of it. I want 2 males for the size of flock we have, maybe 3. And any more than that, we're going to have to process the males, because if you have too many males in with your flock, what happens is they beat up on each other and all sorts of stuff. So you don't want to leave that situation set that way. So 1 drake to 7 ducks is about the ratio I like to have. You can get away with 2 drakes to like 8 or 9 ducks if they've been raised together, but otherwise they start just beating each other up, and they'll eat the skin all the way off around the neck. They'll basically kill the other drake if you don't. So we might as well have meat in our freezer rather than leave the ducks to kill themselves. And then you're like, maybe I shouldn't eat that because I don't know how long it sat in my yard, right? So that's the reality of the homestead, right? Brunhilda is pregnant. That's one of our sheep, and she is showing signs that it's imminent. So it could happen this week. It could happen next week. It could happen the week after that. We don't know exactly when. Like, I think I know when, based on when I witnessed activity, but sometimes activity happens and conception does not happen. So it just depends. She had been with the males for a number of months over the summer, but her udder started filling with milk. And what we observed last year is that can mean we're still 4 weeks out. That was a few weeks ago. That was like 2 weeks ago that we noticed. And it's, what happens at the very end is it goes from it has milk to it has a lot of milk. And then it's like sometime that week. So Tactical said the udder is starting to get even bigger, which is a sign that we are close. And he's watching her for if she sort of separates herself from the other females. We've been really lucky with the sheep in that we don't have to separate them to worry about the other sheep attacking the little ones. We just leave them in their paddock together and it's just sort of happened. And then the little babies are accepted by everybody. So that's been good. We do have the males separated from the females right now because we don't want any babies being conceived right now, just because it's a pain in the neck to have sheep giving birth when it's really cold outside. And that would be the timeline if they get pregnant now. So right after Self-Reliance Festival, we will reunite them. Before Self-Reliance Festival, we are not going to do that because we need to have a farm sitter in. And when you make changes with your flock right before a farm sitter comes in, that's when like animals get out while you're gone and all sorts of chaos happens. So no, we're minimizing changes between now and Self-Reliance Festival. Then right afterwards, it's time to bring them all together again. And then hopefully we'll have a batch of spring sheep on sort of one schedule. So we've, last year it was sort of like whoever got pregnant, whenever they got pregnant. This year we're looking more at controlling the timeline so we know and can plan, and it helps with the management. We'll see if we hold that together or not. We might change our minds and go back to whenever, whatever. I don't know. So that's happening, and it's time to process another round of rabbits, and it's probably time to start breeding the rabbits again. The temperatures have dropped, so it's not over, 88 to 93 degrees when the dudes start shooting blanks. So we're gonna breed some more rabbits. It's been working well as raw food for the livestock guardian dogs. They are not 100% raw right now, but we are heavily augmenting with raw, which then brings the food bill down, the dog food bill down, and it's healthier for them. So Tactical has a system in place for how he remembers to give them raw food. And then, we will build on that over time. The next thing that happened this week, so this is the fun part about raising livestock, is you end up with like funny little stories. And as I mentioned, the female sheep are next door at the big pasture because there's more of them. The male sheep are here. And they're my lawnmowers here at this point. They're rotating through the holler. It's fun to see them over here. Can go out and pet them. They like scratches and all that. Well, Tactical went out the other day and there were no male sheep. He was like, well, I don't see signs that they like panic ran through the fence. Did they jump the fence? Could not find them. Looked everywhere. And then he saw a sheep head stick out from my outhouse. So the paddock they were in was also where the outhouse is. And apparently the boy sheep decided that they were going to play hide and seek with Tactical by going to the outhouse. And so he shooed him out of there, had to clean up whatever he had to clean up, and then closed the door so that there were not sheep in the outhouse. And that was kind of funny. So when your animals go missing, they're not necessarily out of the pasture, but look around for places they could hide because they'll mess with you. The livestock guardian dogs do that all the time. They'll be like, where did they go? And then all of a sudden they'll pop up out of some tuft of grass you didn't realize was really an indentation, whatever. A-Ray Pierre says it's still in the mid 90s there. Yeah, it's cooler here. I think like we got up to 90 the last week a couple of times, and it felt hot because it's humid here. But like this morning, I think it's below 75 and cloudy, overcast. So that's nice. I roasted coffee today in the roasting shack without any air conditioning. It was a little warm in there, but I was like, it's not worth it. I didn't have that much roasting to do today. I was finishing up yesterday's roasting. So, yeah, it worked out well. So that's everything with the livestock. Like, everybody's looking pretty healthy. I did hear a story from one of our community members that they got a parasite that's been killing their sheep. And so I'm going to actually look into that a bit more, because it's resistant to treatment. And that's an important one for me to know more about. I didn't learn how they get into the sheep. What I know from the local veterinarians here, and oh, my hair is getting like, the little claws are digging into my scalp. That kind of hurt. Is that if you rotate fanatically with your sheep, you do much better, which I know he was doing. So that's not what happened there. Because when she came to help us with our sheep initially, because we had a sick one, we were kind of bringing him in and out of the barn because we hadn't gotten the rotation down. So at night we were bringing him in the barn for safety as well. And we didn't have livestock guardian dogs yet. So I was worried about coyotes getting them. She hooked me up with the livestock guardian dogs we have. And she was like, yeah, you don't want them on the same paddock within 60 days. And, it's 45 according to books. And she was like, just do 60. It'll be better. And that means you're not bringing them in and out of the barn all the time. Right. So that was something we took that to heart, and we've had them on a rotation. We basically reserve the barn paddock for times where things are happening, like ice storms. So we'll keep them off of there most of the time. And then if an ice storm's coming, that's the paddock they go to, because then they have like better shelter than what they have out on the pasture. Because of that, I think we haven't had as much. Well, we just haven't had the parasite pressure. We do give them minerals and stuff to try to keep their immune systems up. And the thing is, once you get parasites, that's when you kind of run into this cascading, oh my goodness, thing going on. So I'm hoping we keep that trend, but I'm not going to say that I'm confident we can, because I'm in Tennessee and parasites are strong here. The other thing she told me is from another farmer over the hill who's very careful with their rotation, who was raising wool sheep. The fly strike is bad. So if you have wool sheep, it's really problematic and difficult to maintain. And so that farm has moved to hair sheep as well. So luckily we have a good, strong genetic in our St. Croix and in our Katahdin sheep. And we'll just, knock on wood, I hope that keeps happening. But it's like every time I hear the stories of people getting like hit with parasites that are killing animal after animal, it's kind of freaky. And that's, you always feel terrible when you're raising animals and the ones that are under your care pass away, and you're like, could I have done something? Like, sometimes it's your fault, other times you're like, could I have done anything to prevent this, or is it just the thing that got him is the thing that got him and it was like a fluke? I do know the first 3 months of having the sheep on our property, they were not acclimated to our biome here. Like, their gut biome was not acclimated to what they were eating exactly. I think that was a stress to their systems to move here. And so their resistance was down. And I think, that was when we had just like cycle after cycle of bloat and other things. And since that time, I've had them look skinny. That's about it. And then we had that other one. Yeah, like all of the problems we had were the first 3 months that we had them. So for the person who's listening to this who has the problem, it may just be that you're not over the 3-month hump yet. And hopefully when you get over that hump, you'll be in a much more stable place from the management of your livestock. Next segment is grow. This is where we talk about what we're growing on the homestead. And this is where I also tell you what's up this week. So managing a homestead by yourself is a lot of work. You can set it up to be successful by being very efficient with your systems and by making careful decisions about what you raise on the homestead. That's what I did when I was managing the homestead by myself. But when you have a second person, you can take on a lot more, right? And that means that you you do. Because it's like you can take on more, you're feeding more mouths. Like we feed more than 2 mouths because we have people coming through here. And it's interesting because then when one person can't be there, suddenly you realize like how much you've taken on. Well, many of you know when I transitioned out of my sort of job into this lifestyle full time, I always talked about how I cover my bills, because a big issue is how do you pay for your stuff? I mean, unless you're running a very successful business, which takes time away from the homestead too, it can be kind of freaky. And a lot of you are like interested in what I do because you're wanting to transition out of your job into something more full time. So I used to go through item by item. And in fact, I think I'll do another podcast this fall just about sort of by the numbers, what income I actually get off of the different activities we're doing. It's part of why we are in the Uber spreadsheet time of homestead management, because I've realized I have hardly any grocery bills ever, but I have feed bills. And that's kind of the same thing because it's raising the animals, right? So I wanted to just go over that. So I have been in Nashville at a duplex. So one of the ways I earn money is I have rental properties, and I own one by myself, and then I own 2 different ones with 2 different people where we're like half and half in the properties. And one I own with Tactical, which is base camp, which is where the Eversoles live, and it's right next door. And then I have a duplex I bought in Nashville with another friend of mine who's a really good friend. About 2007, I think we bought it. It's a long time ago. And it has, obviously has appreciated, but it also needs maintenance and has, it has foundational issues and all sorts of stuff. But it's been helpful to my income. And what that property generates for me, you're going to be like shocked, is $250 a month. It's not a lot of money, but like every time you can add a rental property that is bringing money in like that, like if I had 10 like that, then I would be pretty happy with that baseline, right? And my goal has long been to get 10 rental properties and have a system to manage them long term, because with that in place, it's sort of like a ongoing revenue stream that it takes a lot of time at one time when it takes time, or you hire property managers and it doesn't take a lot of time at one time. And then in between times, it's not taking a lot of my time. So that's been fun. And I've learned a lot about managing rentals over the last 20 years of doing it, or 25. I've been doing it for 25 years. I just started in Portland with roommates. It's so fun. I saw somebody talk about how they were really upset that in their, late 20s, they have to have a roommate, even though they work full time. And I just thought, I basically had roommates into my mid 30s when I then had a partner who was in essence a roommate, right? Like this, I don't have a roommate now, and I still have a roommate. They just live in a cabin on my property. And I thought, it's smart because it keeps your bills down. And I know it's annoying to have another person around sometimes, but it keeps your bills down, man. And then that allows you to save more money. And then you can you can use it to buy a rental. I also have friends with really nice homes who never had rentals because they put all their money into their homes instead of their rentals. Like all of my remodel efforts, it feels like, goes mostly to my rentals, except for this year here. We've been doing some stuff. Anyway, so what happened is my tenant of 2 years moved out, and it was not like a horror story. They damaged the crap out of it. Nope. I already knew that the ceiling has, like, the drywall has pulled away from the joists, the ceiling joists, because the house settled and then has been jacked back up, and like that just jacked with the ceiling. And I knew when they moved in that there was going to be this day where I was going to have to deal with that ceiling, and it's not just something where I could sand it off and like, because it's got texture, and then put it back up. So I decided while they're gone, like while we're in between tenants, I was going to deal with that problem, because if the ceiling ever fell while a tenant was in there, that would be horrible. Like it could hurt somebody or damage property. And B, then when you do the repair, it's really dusty, it's really dirty, you know what I'm saying? So like you either do like a quick repair to get it tacked back up, or you're like paying for them to live somewhere else while you deal with it. So I was like, you know what? We need to take the ceiling down. We need to put new drywall up, make sure it's all solid. So the next person, so I don't have to worry about this happening to the next person. So the problem is with a rental, when you have nobody in the rental, like you still have a mortgage to pay and all the expenses. And so I wanted to get it done as quickly as possible. I tried to hire people to help me, and just my timeline wasn't working with the people I knew who could do it. So the other owner of the property flew up last week, or no, yeah, this week, Tuesday. And like I recorded my show Tuesday with Jack and John, and then I packed and I made sure all my coffee orders were as caught up as they could be. And I left and I went and picked him up at the airport, and we went to the duplex and, you know, closed off the bedrooms so they wouldn't get dusty because it's in the living room where we're doing the work. And then I had already paid Nighthawk to take down the drywall and haul it off to the dump. So that was all done. So we were starting with a blank slate. You know, there's like always some drywall nails up there or whatever. So we had some stuff to do. Turned out we had a ceiling beam that had sagged. And again, that's from the settling. And it was not a structural one. It was like what the ceiling was hung to, not what is holding the house up. So we replaced that. We cleaned up everything. We hung insulation. And I'm back here because I had this show today. Going to go back there and hang drywall this afternoon, which is why I need to wrap up. And then I'm actually in conversations with somebody right now who might do the taping and the mudding for me, who is a contractor in Nashville. But it only works for me if they can do that next week, because once that's done, then it's deep clean, then it's paint everything, right? And then from there, I can look around and be like, does a faucet drip or something? Are some cabinet doors in the kitchens needing to be readjusted, which I know they are. Like all like little things like that you look at in between having renters. And then I want it available for rent October 1st. What that means is that Tactical's been alone on the homestead because I've been in town working on that stuff because I couldn't find somebody to pay to do the work. And I'm having trouble keeping up with my harvest. That's why I'm talking about this in the grow section. So I've got green beans that need harvesting certainly up there. I've got tomatoes that need to be harvested and thrown in the freezer so I can process them. And I need to be out the door at 11:15 and it's 10:07 right now. So I'm pretty sure that ain't happening. We'll see. If I get like 20 minutes between this show and heading out the door at 11:15, I will harvest the beans. I got to be back tomorrow afternoon for the meetup we have at 4:30. So we are hanging drywall until 12 tomorrow and then coming back here and getting ready for the meetup. And then if it's not all hung by then, we're going back out Sunday. If it is all hung by then somebody else is going to help me with the tape and mud. And then, well, Tactical will if I don't get this other person hired. And then that means I'm running the homestead by ourselves. So that's, he's been working really hard to kind of make it so I don't have to move the sheep by myself while he's gone, but we'll see. Like I can if I need to. Hopefully I don't have to, but it's okay. So that might mess up my garden because if I don't get those green beans harvested, new ones won't set. Like eventually the plant just thinks if you keep harvesting your beans, the beans keep coming out. If you don't harvest them, the plant thinks its life cycle is over. It makes seeds. It's done. That's what it's doing when it makes green beans. On a happier note, my lettuce row has germinated and we've had a good cycle of rain through, and I have sprinklers on automation. So as long as we keep those little baby plants like happy until they're bigger plants that can deal with some drying out, we'll be good. And I'll have fall lettuce from the outside garden. I put out probably $1 worth of seeds, guys. And if it fails, I'm actually not going to worry about it with the amount of speaking engagements I have this fall. I'm just going to have to suck it up on the garden, unless somebody comes over and does my garden for me. The fall beets look horrible. So I think really this year I have failed at beets unless, a Messiah moment happens in the garden. And I don't think that's going to happen. So they look terrible. I think what I'm going to do next year is have a beet specific raised bed with very, very loose soil, automated watering, and modeled shade. And we'll just see how that goes, because I think where I put them, the soil is not yet broken up enough from me just getting the garden going again. And clay retains water, but does not make a lot of room for your beets to be happy. And they want, like, those roots want to bulb out, right? So I think that's what I'm going to try, like that, and a lot of rabbit poop. A lot of rabbit poop, maybe some biochar, probably some biochar. The peppers are still going really slow. The ones in my aquaponics system look terrible because we need to get rabbit poop up there. And that is what it is this year. It's been a slow pepper year at the market. It's been a slow pepper year too. And then I want to talk about basil. So Tactical has a great basil plant. I have some okay basil plants, and I like to cook with basil, with fresh basil. Hello, Grumpy. And I'll answer your question, Jenny, in a bit before I leave this section. So what happens is we end up with a big bunch of basil. And a lot of people ask me, like, what do you do with the basil? And there are ways. I've talked about preserving it like 2 shows ago. The other thing I do is I store it fresh. And what the mistake most people make with storing basil fresh is they like shove it in their fridge, because everything goes in the fridge and is better, right? Well, basil doesn't like to be cold. So what happens is you speed up the process whereby the leaves become black, and then it goes bad. So what I do with my basil is it'll come in and there'll be like leaves all the way up the stalk, and I'll harvest first the leaves from the bottom and use those. And then I have like a bouquet of basil, and I put it in a flower vase in cold water. Lasts up to 2 weeks that way at room temperature at my house, as long as the sun's not hitting it. So, it starts looking a little peaked towards the end. And then I'll just harvest from the bottom up as I want to use some of those leaves in like salads and stir fries and on my tomatoes with little salt and pepper. It is so good that way. Just a little like homesteading tip. In fact, that'll probably be the homesteading tip for the Monday mail next week. So spoiler alert, you heard it here first. I probably should have done it last week. Been having fun with Luddy helping me with that. So really it helps me get those things out consistently, to have somebody in the background helping me pull all the pieces together. So that's nice. And then Tactical has some ginger that's up down at his cabin garden, and he's not sure if it'll give him anything usable by winter, but I told him, like, you can transplant it. So I may see if he wants to try to move one to a pot now that can come inside in the fall, just because I know that I don't think ginger is going to overwinter so well here, but it takes a while for them to develop roots again. And that's something like, if it dies this year, we'll talk about next year. Do we want to grow ginger, and what system do we need in place to grow ginger? Because it's not exactly a native thing to this area. And then finally, I have a question in from Jenny. Can you do beets in potato bags? I mean, I guess you could, but beets don't work like potatoes where they do multiple per plant, right? They're just sort of like a Swiss chard that gets a bigger root. So it's kind of like, would you grow carrots in a potato bag? It's the beauty of a potato bag is you can keep putting soil on top. But if you use the potato bag like a raised bed, then it would totally work. Like, we've got a guy who Jack Spirko interviewed who grows in suitcases in his yard, because he found that people just throw suitcases away when they're done with them. And it doesn't matter to him if the zipper's broken. That's like a portable raised bed that he doesn't mind throwing in the garbage if he has to. So he has like an entire yard full of suitcase raised beds that he's raising in his rental, so he can take them with him if he moves, which I thought was a brilliant idea. Okay, next up we talk about holler neighbors and community. I don't have a lot to say here because I have been in Nashville, so I haven't been interacting with anybody except for Kurt and, well, a staple gun and a respirator while I hung up insulation. Man, yesterday was an itchy day. I was so glad to take my shower yesterday. But we do have the meetup this Saturday at 4:30 here at the Holler Homestead. Again, if you want to check that out, it doesn't cost money. You just got to get here. livingfreeintennessee.com has the information, and it's a potluck. And you got to get out by 6:30 because I'm going to have to go to bed, at 6:45 or something after all the work I've done this week on the construction project. We did last week play a new game called World Without Rule of Law. It's a card game that has been put out. I actually have one I'm going to give away at the meetup on Saturday because they sent me 2 sets to try out. And basically, the game is sort of more of a conversation game where you put a card out and you read the card and then you say, hypothetically, what would you do in this situation? And it was a fun game. It's not like a competitive game. I sort of would love to add my own rules where we like vote on whose answer is the best or who's lying or something. Like add that layer of liar, liar, pants on fire. I think that'd be kind of fun. But we did that game night and then we played Yahtzee, and it was kind of fun to get back into the game night swing of things, I thought. Anyway, so that's what's up with the Holler neighbors and community. And of course, it's just great to have neighbors nearby, who are into the same things you are. That's all I can say. Next up, we have infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we're building on the homestead. Grumpy says, I got a couple decks of World Without Rule of Law. I'm going to give one away soon. Yeah, I'm literally giving one away Saturday because I don't feel like I need 2 decks, and it just helps get more people aware of the game. Tactical came up with a new design for a chicken water. It's a lot like the Conflicted game, A-Rapier. It's a lot like that. I think Conflicted has stopped making it, but I might be wrong about that. He took a cement tray and it's by the same developers as Conflicted. So there you go. And he filled it with water. And we often use cement trays as waters for poultry around because they're really easy to clean. The ducks will get in them and swim, and that's, fine. Then you need to clean them. And the other water is like the traditional little one with the little bucket top that twists on, can be really frustrating devices. I understand why they exist, but like in my property with a hill, like you have to make sure the little place the water comes out is at the low point, or else it'll just all run out. And they're a pain in the butt to clean, and all the things. So he's been managing with that kind of water for years here. And he just thought, what if I make my own? Because we've tried chicken watering nipples through a PVC drip fed system, and we had a problem with the chickens sitting on him and breaking them. Because if a problem can be had with something, like I know how to break just about anything, and my animals also know how to break just about anything. So he filled it with water. He took a 5-gallon bucket and he drilled a hole in the side, like a couple inches up, big enough for a hose to go in. And then he put the lid on it, filled it like right side up, turned it upside down in the cement water, and in essence has made one of those sort of Tractor Supply style waters that's way more durable. And he said he thinks he adds about 3.5 to 4 gallons to the cement tray water with the 5-gallon bucket by it just burbling out, and what'll happen is when the water's up over that hose drill amount, then it stops burbling out until they drink. So we'll give you an update on how that goes. He just built it this week. The second thing he's doing is installing aluminum wire in the pasture next door. So with proper insulators in the really hard to run areas. So what I mean by that is we rotate the sheep with 2 strands of wire and step-in posts so that they're in different parts of the pasture and don't eat their own poop and get parasites. That's basically what we do. But the pasture is on a slope like this that's like 90 degrees to the rest of the world. No, not quite, but there are some pretty steep areas. There are cliffy areas. It works because sheep can they're kind of like goats. They can climb up all these things, and they got 4 legs and all that. But it's a little harder when we're running the posts and the pulling the wire, and the step-in posts don't always go in solidly because the pasture has areas that are pretty rocky and then less rocky. So he decided, even though we don't own the pasture, so like anything we put in that's permanent is just there. And when the owner says, I've changed my mind, then we either take it down or we leave it there, right? So he decided what to do is to run permanent, like semi-permanent electrifiable fencing with the aluminum wire instead of the braided like strands in the places that are hard to run wire. And then he'll just alligator clip into those when we're running the other temporary fencing. And that's going to make rotating the sheep easier. So that's kind of cool. And it's taken us like a year and a half to really get the paddock rotation over there done because it was so overgrown when we started. You couldn't really see the form of the land and where the rocks were and where hazards were that you want to sort of integrate, and the best way to drive the four-wheeler in different places. Like if you have a fence through the middle of that, you can't drive it. So we had to see it to be able to get it all worked out. So that's kind of cool because that's going to make running the sheep easier in the future. And then our final segment of today's show is finances. This is where I talk about the money on the homestead. So what we've put in place is working so far. It's only been a week and a half. Every time one of us goes to town and comes back, we talk about if anything was spent related to the homestead, track if it needs to be reimbursed or if it was, paid for with a business card or whatever. I don't have a homestead specific business card, and I am going to get one to make that easier. So we reimburse out of personal checking accounts for that right now. And you have to do the reimbursement paperwork, and I hate paperwork. So there's going to be another card in the future here. But we are entering everything as we go so that we can calculate how much we spend on feed and all of those things. And as I said, I'll have a good idea after month 1 what's happening. He's also starting to track, like we just started a new bag of rabbit feed, like how long the rabbit food lasts and that sort of thing. And that's just to give ourselves a good idea of what we're investing in the animals that we're no longer investing in groceries. So that's going well. We'll keep you updated on that. And then like all my focus is on getting this rental ready. And right now I have it up for rent empty just for a 1-year lease in Nashville. And I have people coming out to look at it. Once we're done with the construction part, I'm going to make a decision about if I continue down that road or if we furnish it and kind of tap into the temporary traveling nurse market, because that's another thing that we can do. And it might be a better fit for what I'm doing here. And that I was turned on to that by somebody named Aaron, who's from our network, who does it in that same area. And apparently there aren't enough houses for the temporary 3-month traveling nurse things. So I'm looking at that as a possibility, because the one thing about running rentals, I'll do a whole show on this soon, that's sort of a pain in the neck is the marketing and getting the new tenants in every time. Because we didn't teach our kids how to communicate about rentals. And so the conversations I have with people about this rental are incredible. It's like, it's very eye-opening. And I know it's like, on the one hand, I know like this is somebody who wants housing, but on the other hand, I'm like, wow, you're not representing yourself very well. And I wish I should do a webinar on this, like how to communicate with a landlord about the rental. It's just very interesting. And so and then there's a lot of scams. So, like on all of the platforms where you would market it, there's a lot of scams where people are like, hey, I'll give you $1,000 for my $45 application fee. And then you give me the change, it's like that whole thing. So far I haven't inherited. I'm not helping somebody get their $1 million inheritance yet, but that's going to happen. So I'll send you this code to verify you're you. What's your cell phone number? Like all of that stuff comes on. And it's just interesting how much that has changed in the last 10 years or so. It used to be, I just posted on Craigslist. I'd get 10 showings. I'd do the showings. Now I'm to the point where unless you're willing to put your deposit and application fee down before I show you the house, I don't want to show you the house, because you're just not going to show up anyway. It's an hour and 20-minute drive for me to show you the house. So if I find a marketing arrangement for somebody else who lives closer, I will totally outsource that to them. That's what I did last time. It's just my last person isn't doing it anymore. So it's like a whole transition. So I'm feeling like, one of those temporary things might be a better fit, where it's just there's more pre-screening that happens before they come to me. And That's sort of like walking the fine line between Airbnb, which I really don't want to do there, and having to provide a furnished place. So we'll see how that goes. But that all fills into the finances of the homestead, because that's one of the ways we make money, is renting extra things here and renting something that I have there. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.